Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Iron Bark Podcast. I am your host, Epion, and today, this week, I'm not even going to do a real podcast this week. What you're going to get from me is just a bunch of bitching and a bunch of complaining and ranting, and I'm just going to rant about things I dislike in ecology, in conservation, in content creation, in particular, in regards to conservation, nature, wildlife, etc., etc., etc. So first, I'm just going to talk about content creator theft. People will steal content. They do it. They do it all the time. They've done it to me. They've done it to you. They'll do it to everyone. They're relentless and they don't care because they just want to make a dollar. A dollar make me holla, honey boo boo child. Remember that show on TLC? Anyway, what do we have here? So I remember when I was featured on Nature is Metal. It's happened a couple of times, but I remember one time I actually posted about it on X. And the difficulty about posting about that on X is that it's sort of like an Instagram related feature. If you don't, aren't into nature and wildlife content creation, Nature is Metal is a large sort of amalgamation content creation platform or account exclusive basically to Instagram. It's not as big on other platforms. It should be, but it's not. It's another complaint I have because the other platforms just don't seem to recognize things that are sort of relevant or big on other platforms and don't want to bolster them on theirs to kind of take them away from the other platform. Anyway, I digress. I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, but I got featured on there. I posted about it on X. It's hard to kind of brag about it on X because you will get your reach dampened if you link to other platforms. I think even if you mention them. So anyway, I was able to do it in such a way. Now, there are some other creators who they're doing their best. They're trying very hard. They're good at certain things. They're not very good at others. And if you're listening to this is definitely not about you because they would definitely never listen to this. And I don't talk shit about the people I like. And if I interact with you and I like your stuff and you like my stuff, chances are this is 100% not about you. So don't think, oh, fuck, did I mess up? No, this isn't about you. It's kind of like just one of those people. And they posted so I got featured on that, but they didn't interact with my post. I don't think they liked it. I don't think they commented it. Nothing like that. But they follow me. And I probably pinned it. So I think they more than likely saw it. And it was funny because later that day or the day after, they posted a thing saying, oh, nature is metal. And it was kind of is this guy trying to make, is he trying to see if he can do the same sort of thing as me? And, and that's fair. If you want to do that, that's fair. But here's where I didn't like it. When you document nature and you happen to catch something that's sort of on the metal side or the gruesome side or the gory side of nature, it's incredibly rare to get that opportunity. And it's difficult as a person that films wildlife. It doesn't happen it happens naturally, obviously, but it doesn't happen frequently because when a grizzly bear makes a kill or a coyote makes a kill, they scavenge quite frequently. So it's very difficult to really come across it in the moment. And when it does happen, when a coyote is tearing apart the remains of a deer, they're going for those vital organs and they're kind of getting in and getting out as fast as possible. So it's just a brief moment in time. So unless you're sitting there watching, a grizzly bear cache or a mountain lion cache kill, you're not going to see this stuff. You're just not going to see it unless you're very dedicated to that spot for a long period of time. So anyway, this one guy, he posts a worm he bought from PetSmart or something, some sort of grub from PetSmart. You feed them. They're big green ones you feed to your pet lizards and stuff like that. And he posted in front of a camera or a trail cam or something. And just a bird comes and picks it up and flies away. And I'm kind of this is the and that it was kind of and they may have the caption nature is metal. I was what for me it's kind of the speculation is is it sheer coincidence? Is it them trying to get just as much of exposure as I did in a different way? Is it mockery? Mimicry is flattery, so I'm not even really that offended, but let's dissect it a bit. You are now orchestrating a scenario where you're taking, a grub or a life form or, a worm, and you're going to feed it to a pet anyway, but then you're feeding it to a wild animal. There's nothing, like, I'm not against feeding the birds, okay? But I am kind of against the idea of, how would you even describe this? Like, kind of like, I don't even know. Like, maybe I'm bitching for the sake of bitching and I'm just like insulted, so I'm like biased in this, but I feel like when you're kind of like orchestrating death and you're kind of taking, so like these grubs or stuff, they're not really native to the area. I don't even think they're really native to like North America at all, but we use it to feed like exotic lizards like bearded dragons that aren't either. Well, maybe they kind of are, I think, in some parts, but they're different in a way. They're not the exact same species. And then you're putting that into an element into the wild. I don't know. I'm kind of like, I disagree with it. Like, I'm all for like feeding the ducks and, you know, the squirrels, like, you know, you feed them nuts or whatever, if it's within the bylaws or, you know, legal parameters of your jurisdiction. But I don't know, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, because I was like, that's not nature being nature. That's like humans being stupid. It's like the moment you have a human interfering with nature, it's no longer nature is metal. This is like humans are meddlesome. That's what it should be called. Humans are meddlesome. That's basically how I can boil it down to, is the criticism of it is like, that wasn't nature's metal. That was humans is meddlesome. You shouldn't have done it. You're wrong for it. Anyway, moving on. Another thing I want to like talk about and like bitch and complain and whine and cry about is let's see, what should I non-biologist content creators. And for all of you who aren't aware, I am not a biologist. I am heavily interested in biology. I've read lots of papers, I've read lots of works, I've read books, I've listened to podcasts, like the list goes on. I follow some like intensively. But so maybe this gripe is with me, but I feel like I have like a standard or like a code of ethic in content creation. So what you have is a lot of people wanting to be like Steve Irwin or some biologist. And what people don't realize is when people are documenting nature, wildlife, or animals, and they're sort of like going in and they're picking up like a snake, or they're picking up like a crocodile or a lizard or a turtle, or, you know, handling like some animal that doesn't want to be handled. And there are times where it is like a person who isn't a biologist can handle, you know, wildlife, you know, they're rescuing it, it's injured, whatever. But a lot of the time, they're basically just disturbing wildlife for the sake of views. And that's grimy. I think that's grimy. I think if you're disturbing wildlife, and this is going to sound ridiculous, but I'm just going to advocate for this and hear me out. Hear me out, because I know a lot of you are like, fuck, if I want to touch the fucking whatever, I'll touch it. Okay, fine, whatever. It all depends. It's all variable, like, to some extent. But as a generality, the wild is very difficult to survive. There's like calories in, calories out. These calories will be used for fight or flight or predation, right? So when you interact with that animal, it is going to think you are a threat, even if you aren't, and it will try to fly, it will try to fight, and you will use a large amount of its caloric intake or its energy, which it has to use to live and thrive and survive in the wild. And it may not get its food, you know, in the next week, and it may perish from like starvation. It may, after interacting you, be too tired to deal with the next predator that comes along and then get, you know, picked off. That's sort of the harsh reality, and that's sort of like the negative impact you won't see after you do this kind of stuff with an animal. Now, when a biologist does it, they're calculated, they know these kind of things, they're well aware of everything I just said. They may even give it a little bit of a snack to send it on its way, but an appropriate snack that's within its diet and natural habitat and isn't going to harm it, and within the laws and regulations of its jurisdiction. And they're doing it for a purpose to help the species, whether it's collecting DNA, sampling something, radio collar data, whatever it is, you know, whatever it is. Like they're just testing it to see if it's got a disease, whatever it is. But in the process of doing that, they're also going to put it on video and do it for educational purposes to show people. So then they don't have to really go out and discover that for themselves. They can have a professional demonstrate it to them. So my whole beef is basically content creators harassing wildlife for the sake of clicks and views and likes. I fucking can't stand that. I cannot fucking stand it. Get a proper camera that's really long distance. Don't interfere with them. You know, don't fuck with the animals. There are some animals that, you know, like park animals. You go to like your local park, and there just happens to be like squirrels, and they're friendly, and chipmunks, because, you know, the old people there feed them peanuts, and they come up to the bench, you know, like climb on your lap. You know, they're not threatened, they're not endangered. That's kind of like that whole system, and it's probably allowed in that jurisdiction. It's not a problem. It's a problem in some other places, especially with hard to find animals, right? And you're going out of your way to really go and look for them. Not a fan. Anyway, another thing I want to complain and whine and bitch and complain about, hunting. Now, I get flack. I get flack from people in the wildlife conservation community. They don't really want to accept me because I don't go lockstep with what they believe. They're like, a lot of the time they're like vegan, anti-hunting, anti-this, anti-that. And I'm kind of like, well, I think there's room for it. I think there's room for it in the whole ecosystem of things. I don't think humans are necessarily separate from it, but I think we can't abuse it. So we have to be conscious of, you know, doing it properly. And they don't like that nuance. They don't like the fence sitting. So it's just like, you're a fucking enemy. Get the fuck out of here. Don't fucking talk to us and this and that and da 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 da. Whatever, that's cool. I don't want to associate with people like that anyway, that are too extreme or whatever. But I do like, on the other opposite side of it, you know, I have friends that hunt. I don't like, you know, all that stuff. I get along with them, but we can't get into debates. We get into debates about this stuff, and it's interesting. And this is one thing a lot of hunters have. Some of my hunting friends do go like, you know what, you have a point. You actually got a good point there. In the wild, the animals that die or preyed upon mostly are the ones that are weak. They aren't fast enough. They aren't strong enough to survive, and they get picked off by like a predator, or they die to the cold or whatever. And a lot of hunters will say, "Oh, that wild, the wild, it's dangerous, it's outrageous. You know, they'll die really grotesque ways out there too. It's like the way we do it. It's humane in a way. You know, they die instantly," which is true. But the one big difference is hunters aren't normally hunting or targeting the weak of the herd. They're not targeting the sickly deer. They're not targeting the young one, and they shouldn't target the young one anyway, but they go for the biggest and the baddest. They go for the big buck. Now that big buck is you want the biggest and the baddest to procreate and put out their genes as long as possible, so that the overall stock of that population is continuously strong and they're perpetuating strong genes. If you're constantly taking out the strongest gene producer, you're going to get a bunch of weak animals that don't survive winters, that don't survive against predators, and they eventually dwindle off and get extinct or whatever. So, or extirpated from that area. And it's kind of like, you have to, like, so this whole idea of trophy hunting is kind of messed up in a way too. Like, okay, you're going to use every part of the deer or whatever. You're going to eat most of it. It's fine to have like a memento from that. I'm not saying I'm against making part of it a trophy. But what I am kind of against is like, if you're hunting for food, it shouldn't really matter. Like, you know, the size of the buck's antler or like its horn. You know what I mean? Like, you should just be concerned that you now have food on the table. But now you're making it something more than what sometimes hunters say it is. And it's like, oh, it's sustenance. It's, you know, pest control. There's too many coyotes. Okay, that's fine. But when you're targeting an animal based on more than what it can provide you for food, and it's sort of like a trophy or whatever, there's a little bit of playing foul there, because you're trying to remove a very successful specimen, which is necessary to kind of keep that population strong. So that's my little nuanced beef there. And I think a lot of hunters I think they hate that. They hate that little subject, because it's like, fuck, he's got us. He's got us by the fucking balls a little bit. And that's something they kind of have to admit to, right? And I don't really like to admit that. But some of them do. They're honest about it. They're like, oh, fuck, that's a point I never thought of before. And I like to see that kind of honesty from people. What else can I go with? Let's see. What else I got to fucking be? Really fucking shitty zoos. And pretty much every zoo in some aspect has like a shitty spot to it that isn't like as great as it could be. And yes, funding is an issue. Yes, all that stuff. Yeah, especially when it comes to like the primates and the monkeys. They always look miserable. They never seem happy. They always seem disturbed. I think they need to do better by them. There's some animals that are very successful in zoos, and they continue to be. And, the zoos seem to be trying to do their best, and they play their role. I'm not against zoos, to be absolutely clear. But, there are some animals that you go there and you're like, this one's in distress. This one's in distress. This one's cool. This one's happy. This one looks happy. And I kind of just want to. And then there's some zoos that aren't even really zoos. They're kind of just like someone's like hobby of exotic pets. And there's no standards of care. And it's just like, Tiger King type stuff, right? It's not the greatest. It's not great. It's not a great look. I've seen a lot of really crappy places in my life, and some of them are by far the worst. And I don't know. So I'm not against zoos. They obviously do a lot for conservation reasons, preservation of species, all that kind of stuff. But then some of them is kind of like, oh, this is more like a factory depot of like wildlife specimens as opposed to, like a let them live their best life mentality type thing. I think that's about all my bitching and moaning and complaining. I did quite a bit of it. I don't know. Maybe some of you got your back up against the wall when I said that stuff, because I know a lot of zoologists and stuff listen to this podcast, and you don't get mad at me. Okay, don't get mad at me. I gotta say this because they will get mad. They always get mad. Your heart is in the right place. You're doing the right thing. You're doing what's best for it. And I'm sure in your workplace, when you see things that don't seem very good, you make recommendations to the bosses and you say there should be an effort into improving this. And I know you guys do that. And there's a lot of good people that work for the zoos. People who work for zoos are good people. The owners, on the other hand, may have inherited a mess that they're trying to make better as well. So don't hate on the zoos. Don't get all, oh, what else? I can go off again. I know what else. Those like eco protesters, the ones that like block the roads and spray paint things and this and that. I ain't a fucking fan of those guys either. Even though like I'm like, I like the environment. I like ecology. I like conservation. But like I also like humanity, and I want people to be prosperous, and I don't want them to struggle or have hardship. And sometimes that means like an economic balance between, industry and environment. And we can do this stuff responsibly. It doesn't mean we have to have zero of it. So I believe in like responsible industry, improving the ways of doing that. I don't think protesting I believe in the peaceful protests, that don't impede on society. It's sort of like you're there and you're sitting there with your sign off to the side, not harming anyone, not damaging anything, not hurling insults. You're just peaceful protests. I support someone's right to do that. I've never done it, but I support your right to do that. What I don't like is when there's damage and vandalism to property, to monuments, to art, to culturally significant places and buildings, jeopardizing people's safety, public safety, jeopardizing your own safety. The list goes on and on. I can't support that. I can never get behind it. And there's some people that listen to this that get upset at me when they're like, you're fake, remember? And it's like, I'm not fake. You guys you're out of control. You're out of control. This isn't how you do things. If you want to do things, you start a petition, you go to your local representative, you table some good arguments, you get statistics and you go, hey, is there a way we can make this better? Is there a way we can improve on this? Is there a way we can make this safer? Is there a way we can make it more environmental? And you compromise, and that compromise, even though it's not maybe the pie in the sky of what you wanted, it's a bit better than where you started, right? And then you get something. And there's proper channels to go through. And people, I feel like people never want to go through the proper channels because it takes an exorbitant amount of work. It takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of time and dedication and critical thinking and analysis and, information gathering, and you're putting it into like in a report and making summaries, and you're getting into contact and making appointments with important people. And it's a lot of effort, but it's way easier to just, spray paint something or throw it on a sign and cause mayhem. And it's like, if you really want to work to save something, the proper channels, people say, oh, they're ineffective. They're not ineffective. You're just ineffective. You're not working hard enough. And then they think, oh, I'll work hard. I'll go there. No. You go through the proper channels. You do everything legally and you do everything properly. And if you're convincing enough, and if you're proper enough, and if logic and reason dictates how things are going to work at the end of the day, and if you got a point, and it is logical and it's reasonable, and it's rational, it will more than likely go through and it will work. And so I can't get on board of these like protests and that are like egregiously bad, and I don't know. I don't support it. I'll never support it. I just, and I like the environment. I like conservation. I like that stuff. I'm an advocate for it. I speak out for it. I do this podcast. I go, speaking now. It's like, I want to conserve the environment. I want future generations to be able to enjoy it. I want it not only to be conserved, but I want it to be like, to grow a bit too. I want it to expand. I want to see these deer populations maybe form into subspecies. I want these like mountain lion species to form into subspecies as they kind of like broaden their range. But I want to see that in conjunction with humanity living in harmony with them and not in conflict. I don't want to see human and nature conflict. I don't want to see like roadside accidents. I don't want to see people's pets being nabbed by mountain lions. And we have to come up with strategies where both things can benefit. And I know that takes a little bit more money and a little bit more thought and a little bit more progress, but it's something that we can do and work towards. And I know it's like a kind of like a utopian vision of sort of like compromise, but I like it. I like it a lot. I like it quite a bit, actually. So what else can I talk about? I think that's about it. I'm going to jump into my content creation for the week. And I'm not going to lie. I've been dragging my fucking feet in content creation. I just have. I don't think I've put up like any videos. It's brutal. It's brutal. I need to like anchor down and just focus. And I'm just haven't been. I think a part of it is like a bit of burnout on my part. Put in a lot of effort. I do get a little bit back, but it's a grind. Anyway, February 1st was a National Serpent Day. Today is to spread awareness for the conservation of snakes. The fear of snakes is a pretty common fear, likely ingrained in our DNA from centuries of negative experiences. However, snakes are good for the ecosystem, especially with keeping rats and other rodents in check. Snakes also help a lot with modern medicine. Modern studies have proven snake venom can produce painkillers, drugs for hypertension, and even treatments for strokes, heart disease, and possibly even cancer. They may have caused us hardship in the past, but have proven somewhat the opposite during the modern day. So, a little shout out to snakes that posted that for National Serpent Day. January 31st was International Zebra Day. Today is to spread awareness for zebra conservation. I didn't really have much to say about this, but what I did say is like kind of like a little interesting factoid. You know what I always found interesting or fascinating is what it says. Wild horses in North America are starting to develop subtle striped marks around the bottoms of their legs. Maybe one day they'll go full zebra. It's kind of cool seeing that sort of like adaptation emerge, the emergence adaptation. Did I talk about National Daisy Day? No, that probably wouldn't have been last podcast. So January 28th is National Daisy Day. Here are some photos I took of flowers that commonly bloom in late spring in the Rocky Mountains. commonly found in meadows along hiking trails. I don't know if these are actually or technically daisies or not, but I like to use today as a reminder to stop and smell the flowers and to appreciate them. Also, if you could resist picking them so that the bees and other pollinators can do their thing and people can have an opportunity to enjoy them as well. So that's kind of like a point I wanted to hit home. There's been tons of times I've been hiking and I've just seen people just like annihilate the side of the trail, just like take everything, and they're making a bouquet. And it looks like a beautiful bouquet, but a lot of the hiking places I hike prohibit it because some of these flowers are actually kind of threatened or endangered, and they have very small windows where they can reproduce, and it's maybe even just a couple of weeks, and they kind of rely desperately on these pollinators to do that, to make them spread and whatever. And we have like problems with bees not having enough to pollinate and all that stuff. So, and they look very beautiful, and if you pick them all, like after I was done doing that hike and I saw this person picking all these flowers, I was like, the next people that hike this path or this trail will not get to see the same beauty that I did or that person did because they removed it all from it. So and it does make the hike a lot better when you're just surrounded by like a bunch of vivid colors and cool blossoms. So I know like people are like, oh, it's just picking flowers. I hate to be that guy. There's probably plenty of places you can pick flowers. Just know where you are, know what you're picking, and sort of know if you're in a place that's supposed to be enjoyed by everybody. And then I just took like another random photo for my content creation there of a body of water. Yeah, that's about it, folks. That's about it. Yeah, that's about it. Yeah, that's all I got. That's all I giddy gosh got. That's all I got. I think I managed to crank out an episode. What else can I bitch about? The X payments seem to stop. I don't think X is paying anymore. They changed like their expectations and like, well, I can't say that because I also haven't been putting in the effort. Been missing days, haven't been putting out videos. That's a big part of it too. I haven't been replying as much to people. So I can't really complain about that, but I see a lot of people saying that the pay has changed, so it's probably a multifaceted thing. The followers seem to continuously drop. I lose more than what I gain. It's unfortunate. I need to step up my game. Anyway, if you're stuck with me, thank you. Thank you for every like. Thank you for every comment. Thank you for every repost and quote post. And thank you for every watch. Thank you for every bookmark. Thank you for every share. Thank you for every download. Thank you for every follow. Thank you. Until next time, guys. And do I need like a good sign off? I don't think I ever sign off the same way. I need a good sign off. What's a good sign off? I don't know. Catch you on the wild side. No. What about let's get wild? Nah. Okay. Goodbye.